Hey, Alex.
Hi, Talia.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great to see you. You look beautiful.
Thank you.
So
Likewise.
fun. I'm so excited to sit down with you and have this conversation.
Yeah, same.
We're going to have a really good time. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. I want to start by just telling us a little bit about you. And I know you have a really, actually, very interesting background. You've been at Eved for a long time. So let's start about what you do at Eved, and then how long you've been here, and then how you got to Eved.
Yeah, of course. So I lead Evid's client and merchant services team. I've been with Evid almost 10 years now. So it's been a fantastic 10 years. And I started on our implementation team as an implementation manager. Over the last 10 years, I've gotten the opportunity to take on a lot of new challenges at Evid, thanks to you and your leadership and guidance. So now I oversee Evid's help desk, our customer success team, our implementation team, our merchant services team, and our product team. So really all the client operations fall under me.
Big job Alex has. Really big job she has. I remember, Alex, when you started and we had a client that was really, really tough.
Yes.
And like you came in and you just had to have a lot of grit and perseverance to be able to push through that. I can remember that. I can't believe that was 10 years ago.
Yes. Well, I have a background in consulting, so I've had a lot of experience coming in and dealing with clients that are a little more tough, and really you have to like navigate a lot of ambiguity and put a lot of structure around things. So that was always my specialty, and it was fun. It was definitely a challenge at first client, but it was fun to be able to bring some of my experience into Evid.
And then I know that there was a time between or around the consulting, and then you were like really had this really amazing job where you really contributed to the world in a very unique way. So do you want to share that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in consulting for a while, and then I decided I really wanted to, like you said, give back. I wanted to explore the world a little bit. So I got a job working for a social enterprise called Rent to Own, and it was based in Zambia. So I was living for a year in Zambia, and
there's like no air. I remember you were telling me these stories. It was like really crazy, right?
Yeah, there wasn't. And there is like something called load shedding, where the electricity goes out like every couple of hours, so that there's enough electricity for everyone in the country. It was interesting because where I was living, there would be certain hours where like you just didn't have electricity. It was really hot, so that meant no fans. It was definitely a really unique experience, and I loved it, and I was able to work there, and the company I worked for helped farmers and small business owners in rural areas of Zambia. And I was leading like new special projects for the company. So it was super cool experience. And then I got back to Chicagoland, and one of my friends from college worked at Evid, and we were having dinner, and I was ready to transition permanently back to Chicago. And she's like, oh, I work for this super cool company called Evid, and we're hiring implementation managers. I got to know everyone as part of the interview process, got to know you.
And it's been a 10-year journey ever since.
Yes, exactly.
Well, there's been a lot that we've gone through together. And at Eved, we are a younger company. We're in year 16. So you still was very early.
Yep.
And every single person at Eved, I feel like, is very much a part of building it. And I'm sure you could talk a little bit about the feeling of being a part of something that everything you do every day matters and it has impact on the company.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's one of the things that has kept me here so long, because every couple of months it feels like there's a new challenge that we're trying to solve. Me and my team have direct impact on being able to come up with ideas. And you and the leadership team are so supportive of everyone's ideas, like not just my idea as someone on the exec team, but the folks on my team as well. And we come up with ideas to solve these challenges or unique problems. And you do have a lot of impact on the company and the business and on our clients. I think it keeps a lot of the folks on my team engaged too.
And I think that also for those who are not part of a typical smaller company, or a company that I think even some of the best companies aren't necessarily even because of their size, but it's just what the expectations are is how you show up. And I think for us, like, we very much measure outputs, not inputs. It's not about how many hours you work. It's the results that we actually drive and the difference that we actually make. But I think a big part for us too is just our culture of how we treat how we treat each other and how we treat our customers and how we revolve around customers. And I think it's interesting. A lot of people don't know that the name Eved really comes from the root word of service. And it was really important to us that if we were building a tech company, that it wasn't going to be like a lot of tech companies where it's just like, there's no service, right? Is you get the product and that's it. And for us, especially really focusing on the creative industry where it's all about service and things are so fast paced and people need things like it's, or there's major consequences if they can't get through to you at that point. Like it had to be about service. So let's talk just a little bit about, the service that you lead this on our team and how it shows up for the clients, what it's like as a team, and why the culture of our company allows to be able to create this experience for our customers.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I do feel like our whole company, we're not just a software company, we're also a services company. And I think everyone at the organization or in the organization really embraces that. For our clients, they're encountering unique challenges every day with their jobs, and we're here to support them. And our team, we go above and beyond to make sure the client has a great experience and is able to achieve what they need to achieve in their jobs. For example, if they're organizing a large event and they need to get their hotel or their vendors paid prior to people coming on site so that their team has a really great experience, we're making sure that happens. We're on the phone with them that morning, making sure that they have all their invoices approved, that everything's ready to release the payments for the vendors. If there's any questions a vendor has about their payment, we're hopping on the phone with them. We're answering emails right away. We really want the client to have a phenomenal experience. We don't want there to be any hiccups when folks come on site. Our team, not only are we a software company, but we're also really a services company, and we're there to support our clients and make sure that everything goes really well. And we go above and beyond to do so. That goes all the way from our support team who's answering phone calls and escalating any issues to our product team that wants to make sure the product has a seamless experience for the client so they don't run into issues.
What makes it unique? I mean, we serve the music and entertainment and the production and the event space, and they're very unique in terms of like the creative industries, and things are very fast paced. And the reason why they use Eved is because their traditional systems don't work to support their workflows and their types of business. So what is it unique about these categories, these creative industries that make it so different, especially as it comes to the financial aspects of how they have to get their suppliers and how they have to pay them and how they got to get all their receipts and their invoices and everything done?
Well, in these spaces, things move so fast. And there's a lot of changes too. You might be planning an event for months and you get a phone call 2 days before that event happens from an executive at your company. And all of a sudden he or she wants to host a large dinner, and you're working on securing a restaurant really quickly, and you need to pay the restaurant. Often too, there's things like deposits that are required before a restaurant or a hotel will hold space for you, especially when it's a really busy time of the year or the month for them. So there's a lot of things that change really quickly in this industry, and the suppliers often require things like deposits, and these traditional systems at these large corporations, they don't work very well for that. These traditional systems are built to pay like manufacturers for widgets and have these 60, 90-day payment terms. And when you're trying to secure like a really hot restaurant, with 2 days notice, you're gonna need to be able to pay them within a couple hours, and we're able to help clients facilitate that.
So where is the balance? I think we also see that in production, right? The same kind of thing. You have a movie set, you're renting a space, everybody's being paid for that time, all your entire payroll, all your very highly paid actors and actresses. And if that particular rental lot that you're on does not have their money, they're waiting, and everyone's waiting until they actually get paid, right?
Exactly. And you're paying all that talent, all that crew while you're waiting to get onto your lot. So time is literally money there. So it's so important that payments are made quickly and on time and securely too.
Yeah, you want to share? I know there's like some really interesting stories about like fraud that have happened that we've on our side have caught, but like where stories you've heard from the industry or examples that we've been able to catch that, like fraud schemes that were trying to, really take millions of dollars from customers.
Absolutely. It happens all the time. And whether it's credit card fraud, it's very common with credit cards that people either within the cast and crew or a vendor takes that card number and charges it, on stores that they're not supposed to spend on for personal items. So with our tool, you have a ton of visibility into what everyone is doing and every purchase that's being made on the platform. And there's a lot of different approval rules you can put in place. We have several different fraud engines throughout our platform to catch fraud. It's a real issue. And especially with the production industry, historically they would send checks as payments. Checks are so subject to fraud, and there's a huge chance you can reissue a check to yourself. There's people that take the checks and I think they put it in the water or something and erase the name
or
and put their
duplicate
name.
more checks with the bank account of the production, and they don't even realize it for a while until they've issued all of these checks to all these places.
Exactly. So it's so important these days to make sure you're doing things digitally and securely to really cut down that risk of fraud. We also, what we see often in actually the production space, I've seen it quite a bit, is folks are moving so fast and they accidentally submit an invoice more than once for payment. And we have a really robust duplicate check engine that makes sure that if someone is submitting an invoice, there's not another invoice for that same vendor for that same amount in the system. And we catch that all the time, and we flag to the client, hey, you already submitted this invoice, so that they're not paying a supplier more than once.
What's the difference is people say, okay, fine, we hear that about checks, so we've moved to ACH. But then when they're doing ACH, now they have to figure out how to collect that bank account information and all the fraud schemes that we've seen there in terms of what could happen if you're collecting all that information over email or you're using your team to be able to collect that information.
Yeah, exactly. They're collecting it via email, and it's so easy for someone to change the ACH information, write their own information instead of the vendor's information. Or even within the vendor, you could have an employee that changes the ACH information. And when it's all collected via email and when it's manually entered into your banking portal to make a payment, there's no checks that are happening. No one's checking to make sure that ACH information matches the vendor that you're actually paying. There's also no sanction screening. You could really be paying anyone. So it's so important that there's checks that happen as part of that process. So you're making sure that the banking information you're paying is matching the vendor that you're trying to pay.
Now with AI, it's very public. I think people find out what movies, especially in the movie or in events also, what they're producing, what they're doing. And then they're trying to hack into their emails, and especially on the production side, a lot of those emails are not on a Microsoft account. A lot of them are Gmail emails and things like that. It's very easy to hack. I know we've seen that quite a bit, and they could easily go and send bank and or hack the vendor's emails, and they do a phishing scam and send wrong information.
Exactly. Or what I've seen is that they send an invoice that looks like a real invoice.
Yeah.
And people are just moving so fast. So they're forwarding the invoice to their accounting department saying, please pay this.
Yep.
Accounting department pays it. And it's a totally fake invoice.
Yeah.
That's something that we prevent by having a lot of visibility into who you're paying, making sure everything's routing for approval, making sure we have the option for approvers to say how they know that the goods and services were rendered, because that's really important, that someone's actually looking at the invoice and making sure that you receive these goods and it's not just
and also most important is that it's a validated vendor, right? So the vendor onboarding being shifted off of the clients. They don't have to do any of that. And we're really making sure who the vendor is, doing the sanction checks, making sure that their bank account belongs to them, making sure doing TIN checks, all that stuff the client doesn't have to do. And they know if that vendor is set up in Eved and that they're in the Eved network, then they can work with them. And it's just about selecting the right vendor. So I think that's a huge difference. I remember, you'll have to remind me, I remember there was been a couple of times where we've done sanction checks and there have been people on terrorist lists. There've been a few times. Yeah.
Terrorist lists are people who have had charges against them in certain states. So every time we onboard a vendor, anytime they update their banking information right before we process a payment to the vendor, we ping a third party who has access to all these great sanction databases. And there are times where we get a flag and we stop the payment if we get a flag, or we stop the vendor from continuing on in the onboarding process. And then we're able to assess if the vendor that we're trying to pay is indeed the person who, has these charges against them in Florida or whatever state it is, and or internationally. And then we're able to escalate to the client, and the client can decide if this is really a vendor that they want to be doing business with or not.
Yeah, and our clients a lot of them are big Fortune 500 companies, or they're producing really major movies. And the last thing they want from a PR perspective is that they paid some of these people that some of their people mistakenly, like they didn't realize, they didn't know that, oh, this is a vendor that does production, or this is a vendor that's like, rents cars, and we're global. So it's all over the world. So I think this especially happens outside the United States in different countries.
Absolutely.
And, it's not even intentional, but they don't have checks. And if you're going to start to ask your team who's moving so fast to try to use third-party tools to do sanction checks on every single vendor that they're paying, it's not possible. So being able to have that feeling securely that everyone they're paying is not going to wind up being the next PR story against them and wind up on the desk of their executive team, I think that's a really big deal. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, yes, we do so much automation with that, and if it goes through, it goes through. But when there actually is a stop and the screening comes back with the potential warning, that actually does take the human team of ours to look into it and to work on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because we put in the effort to make sure that vendor is actually matches a sanction before we escalate it to the client. So there's quite a bit of work that we're doing behind the scenes, but it is all behind the scenes. So for the client, it's a seamless process, and for the vendor, it's a seamless process too. The vendor takes about 10, maybe 15 minutes to complete the full onboarding process. And that includes all the sanction screening that we're talking about, the banking validations that we're talking about. There's TIN checks that we do. It all happens behind the scene. So for the client and for the supplier, it's very seamless and very fast. And
especially normally especially in the production space, the client and the vendor, for every single production, they have to go through a typical and other forms, not with EVED. You have to onboard your vendors every single production, and onboarding them into a typical ERP system or some of these other systems is very onerous and very time consuming, and could take weeks till you get, saying that they're approved. And you don't have that time within this industry. And they're doing it every time. And for a vendor who works with 30 different companies in a month, they had to do 30 different onboards. And production, the client and the vendor doing it every time for every single film. So what's I think also super unique about EVED is that, yes, the vendor takes 15 minutes and does onboards, but it's one time. And once they're in the EVED network, any production, any client of ours, anyone using EVED can use that vendor, and the vendor doesn't have to re-onboard every time. They do it once.
Yep, they do it once, and at the end of the year, they get one 1099 from us. So they don't get 20 1099s from all the different productions that they worked on that year. They get
one. That could be hundreds even, exactly. However many productions you're doing, you're getting so many 1099s. Exactly. You have to file all of those.
Exactly, yeah. So it really simplifies things for the vendors too.
And also for the vendor too, when they get paid, often they'll get paid from all different types of companies, and all of a sudden they'll look in their bank account. No, there's no remittance telling them. They just say, oh, there's, $20,000, $20,203.10 sitting as a deposit. And they're like, weird. And I've been on that side, right? In some of my smaller companies, and it's how much time we spent trying to reconcile what project, who's this really from, what division is it for, especially if it's a large company and you work with multiple different divisions from that company. It's hours trying to reconcile it to the proper invoice. So how is it different from the vendor perspective with EVED and providing that visibility? Where does that add value for the vendor and for the client?
Absolutely. So every time we process a payment, we automatically send a remittance notification to the vendor. That notification includes how much they're paid for and what invoices they're being paid for. So they can easily reconcile what they're getting in their bank account to what invoices that they have outstanding in their internal system. So it's really easy for them to match up those payments. And then they're not coming to the client and asking them, hey, did you pay me? How much did you pay me for? They have it all via email. They also have a portal they can log into, and they can see the status of all of their invoices, if they've been paid, when they've been paid. And if the vendor ever has any questions, our help desk is available to help them. So we not only support our clients, but we also support the vendors with any questions that they have. So we take a lot off our client's plate there too, because the vendor is no longer coming to the client. Hey, where's my payment? When am I getting paid?
Or they're trying to call, I've been also that where you're like, call our AP team, or the client has to try and call finance, be like, where are they getting paid? I need to get this paid. And especially if you're like, number one, if you need a deposit in before, but also if you need to pay their balance and you want to use that vendor again, like vendor relationships in our industry are very coveted and like really important. And if you don't get that, if the vendor doesn't get paid properly, then they're not going to work with the client again. So like those are also important parts to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's super important. And our clients really trust us to work directly with their vendors. And often they direct their vendors right to us because they know that we're going to give their vendors great support and be able to answer their questions, be able to get their vendors paid quickly. And that really means a lot to us that the clients have that amount of trust in us, because to your point, these relationships between the clients and the vendors, both in the production space, in the meeting and event space, in the music space, they're just so important.
And also at the same time, even though they send them to us because they have a lot of other things they want to do and they know this is a service that we offer, they could look up in the portal, right? The vendor has all the information. The client has all the information. They can see the status in real time of where the payment's at,
Absolutely.
if it's processing. So there are no more calls anymore going to their AP team. And I think that's a really big deal.
It's a huge deal, especially for these smaller one-off payments and these vendors who are individuals, and maybe they're not as savvy as the large corporations that you're also paying. So you're probably going to get more questions from the individual vendors anyways, and we're there to help support that.
Which is, I think, also, again, behind the scenes when you think you run the help desk. And even though it's all automated and it's really easy, I think from a client's perspective, it's like, I don't deal with that supplier onboarding and I don't deal with supplier payments. Evid takes care of that completely. So yes, the software is amazing, but as you're talking about, there are exceptions that come where, or vendors, they didn't look at their remittance, they skipped their email, they didn't want to log into their portal, so they're just calling. And there's got to be someone on the other end who's there to answer that question and doesn't just tell them, oh, just go, we're not answering you. You got to go log in. And then which is a lot of times what you get from lots of software companies.
You get that all the time from software companies where they either don't provide support for certain questions, or it's really hard to be able to get to the point where you're talking to an actual person. And with us, everyone has a phone number that they can call. So if they ever have questions, where's my payment? We'll answer the phone. We'll tell them where their payment is, when it's going to arrive in their bank account if it hasn't already arrived. We'll answer all of their questions via email. We'll give them the tools, to your point, to find it themselves. But we're always happy to answer the questions. We have vendors that come to us like every other day asking us for the payment status because they just don't want to log in anywhere. They'd rather come to us because we're so responsive and it's so easy to find out. So we're happy to support vendors either way. Every vendor want something different. Some love being able to log in and see the status of their payment. Others would prefer just to talk to someone or email someone and get a quick answer. And we're able to support them in both situations.
And I know we just hit 20,000 industry global vendors in the Evid network, which means they're not just they're set up ready to be paid. Which is a huge deal.
Yep.
And I think vendors really, because their experience on Evid is very positive. They can see where they're getting paid. They get their remittance. Like a lot of their challenges with doing business in these industries get solved through Evid for them. So they stay on. Our vendors, like the number that drop out, very teeny tiny, like probably less than 1%.
Absolutely.
Right? They all stay in. They like it. It's pretty positive. You want to talk a little bit about like the vendor side of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you said, we're super excited to have 20,000 vendors in our network. And it's really great for both the vendors and the clients because often when the client's looking to pay someone, the vendor's already signed up and ready to be paid. So it's super easy.
I think we're like in the event industry, it's about 60% of our clients, like vendors, like right when they start with Evid, are already onboarded.
Yep. That's the exact percentage.
And how quickly, if they didn't have a vendor, does your team get that vendor onboarded?
Yeah, so for the vendor, it takes like 10 or 15 minutes to sign up. It's super fast. And on average, we get vendors onboarded in one business day. which is incredible because a lot of these large corporations, it takes
Weeks.
2 weeks or
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
And lots of paperwork on their part. I
Yes.
think the average cost to onboard a vendor into an ERP system is around $200 to $250.
That
So
sounds right.
you think about, one production could have a few hundred vendors. An event program has like thousands of vendors often because they're global and they're one time. So you think about all that money they're spending just to onboard, like right away that savings. And then you're dealing then too with all of the compliance that's required. And then you're dealing with the 1099s that a different department spending all of January, issuing all of those, that like all of that stuff is gone. So it's a time savings, but of course it's financially, it's a really big impact in terms of the savings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Huge impact for the clients. And then for the vendors, all they have to do is this 15-minute process, and then they get direct deposit into their bank account. So it's really nice, especially for our production vendors who are like on the go. They're able to sign up on their mobile device. So it's really easy to sign up, right after they're done filming or while they're on the road. And then, if the client wants to pay them on Thursday, by Friday morning, they see that deposit in their bank account and they're so happy that they've been paid. It's all in their bank account. It's really fast and easy for them too.
Listen, man, I think like a lot of times, especially in the event industry and in the production industry as well, if people are listening to this, like, oh, well, deposits, then I'm just using a credit card. I think we have the AvidPay card. So we understand credit cards really well too. But I think that not everyone understands that when doing a credit card, yes, it does solve for if you're waiting to get on board, you need to do a quick deposit. But I don't think that it also creates challenges. And I want to talk about that for a second. Because yes, for certain purchases, on-site purchases, certain things, yes, a card is great. But there are setbacks to a card, both on the vendor side in terms of the work that they have to do, and on the client side in terms of the work they have to do, and on the compliance and control visibility side. So let's talk just a little bit about that. Again, we're not against cards. We have our own AvidPay card. We think it's a really great solution for certain circumstances, but there is trade-off to it if you have to use it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's major trade-offs. It's great because it's a very fast way to get payment to a vendor. However, when you're calling your credit card number into someone, they could charge that like however much they want. Like there's no control in place to make sure that they're charging the invoice amount. These days, what we see happening often is vendors are adding on different fees, like either a processing fee or whatever additional fees onto the invoice after you've given them the credit card to charge, or they're accidentally charging it twice, or you might have only authorized one charge on the card, and then all of a sudden, without you even authorizing it, the vendor decides to do another charge, whether it's for like the final invoice amount or some extra, like the vendor's just charging it. And then you have all these charges on your credit card statement, and you have to figure out like what exactly did they charge me for? And there's a lot of reconciliation work. You have to keep track of the receipts. You have to make sure that you have a receipt for all these charges and that they're legitimate. So it's really quick and easy to give someone your credit card information. There's a lot of reconciliation and work on the back end to reconcile all those charges and make sure that they're legitimate.
And even like the one-time V cards, they're not really just the amount. Like the vendor still has to take it off the email that they get, type in manually the card number, put in the dollar amount. The dollar amount could be less, it could be more by certain amounts. And you're still having to then make sure that you look at that charge and reconcile it to the right invoice. So even if the event planner or the production accountant like isn't doing it, somebody else is sitting and having to sit and reconcile. And what we've learned from being so close to this is that there's a tremendous amount of fraud. Like it's just expected that there's fraud, even unintentional fraud. And it's hard to know what's fraud. And there's just a tremendous amount of like overcharging. And it's just the effort to have to go through all of those charges and find them. If it's small amounts, you're just not going to, obviously if there's a large amount, and that it's time consuming. And also then the visibility too, I think to it is that if you're looking through charges and it just says the vendor's name and you don't have the invoice, you then have to manually, somebody's keying in that invoice or something different around it. So definitely a lot of different challenges that come from that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're really not getting good quality data from a credit card. Often you're just getting the name of the merchant, and it might not even be the name of the merchant that you recognize. It might be the name that's in the card database. and then you're getting one charge for one amount. And that could be $100,000 charge that's for food and beverage and room nights and meeting space and all these different things that you're losing visibility to by putting that on a credit card rather than invoice-based spend.
And why does that matter? Because people would say, okay, well, visibility, everyone talks about visibility. Why does that matter? And what do we do from an Evid Pay? Because obviously we do have the Evid Pay card, and we encourage people, you have on-site transactions, you have internet transactions, and we do have our apps that allow them really easily to grab that receipt and code it automatically. So we do our best in those situations it's the best experience you can have on a card, right? With what we've tried to build in and we'll continue to build in. But when we talk about Evid Pay, and I think it's unique because it is a closed loop. It is the ability to make sure that people get paid, that they don't some reconciliation, but it's not ACH from the customer, and it's not, the card. So can you talk a little bit about how Evid Pay is able to take every challenge that everyone has and kind of tick those boxes and deliver the easiest experience, the most compliant experience, and the most visibility from that experience?
So what's really great about Evid Pay is you have to have approval before we release the payment. And we're still able to release payments really quickly. So how it works is you can go ahead and you can upload an invoice into Evid. We actually scan all of the data off the invoice, so you don't have to manually enter a bunch of data. That is all captured automatically. And then we'll route the invoice for approval. Our approvals are really easy. You can approve via email, you can log in and approve on your desktop, or you can approve on your mobile device as well. And so you're approving the payment before it goes out. And then once the invoice is fully approved, we're able to release that payment, and the supplier is able to get paid really quickly. And we release the exact amount of the payment that the invoice was approved for and that was captured on the invoice. So if that invoice is for $1,000, you're only paying $1,000. You don't need to worry about the vendor charging you $1,300 for some reason.
Because we're pushing it to them. They're not in control. We're in control,
Exactly.
Which means the customer is in control. This is what I'm paying you. This is what you're getting. Kind of like what they would understand from an ACH perspective is this is the payment I'm actually sending to you. But I think the unique difference is that what you just said is that it's the invoice itself. So when the invoice becomes the kind of key piece that's going after, what happens when in real time, when that invoice gets paid and the money is moved to the supplier, to the vendor?
Yeah. So when that happens, it goes directly into the vendor's bank account. They see it in their bank account. They get that remittance, so they know exactly what they're paid for, how much they're being paid for. And what we do too on the back end is we send all of that data back into the client's ERP or accounting systems. So we integrate with all of the major accounting systems, production accounting systems, large ERP systems, smaller ERP systems. So the client has visibility not just in Evid to all of their data, but they also have that visibility in their internal accounting or ERP system.
So let's walk through it. I think we have one client that's in 80 different countries or something like that.
We do.
And so a day is lots and lots of what we call payment runs, which I think is important to understand also. So let's just say that day they had 10,000 invoices that they were processing through Evid. All of those vendors already onboarded onto Evid, or if they weren't, they got onboarded very quickly. And that's all done. Client doesn't need to touch it, right? So now they've done business. Maybe they've set up a budget, right, beforehand within Evid. So that's also a piece that we should talk about, because you don't want to be able to exceed that budget is another compliance and control.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we do have this great budget module where you can create a budget in the system, and that budget could be for a specific event. It could be for a specific department if we're talking about a production. It could be for a series of events that are occurring over one quarter. There's all sorts of ways you can set up a budget in the system. And then we have the ability to route that budget for approval. And then we lock down that approved budget so you can only submit invoices up to that approved budget amount. So everything has controls in place, and we don't let users exceed the approved budget amount. And then once a user is submitting those invoices, all those invoices are routed for approval. The user has to say how they know that those goods or services were actually delivered or received by them.
And it's coded already, right? We have all their coding from their ERP. So they just use, like you said, you just upload it, scans it, it codes it for them, routes. Like, so it's completely off the plate of the event planner, of the production accountant, of the finance team. They're just like submit, approve, go.
Yep, exactly. It's off their plate. They submit it. And behind the scenes, we're capturing all this data. We're capturing the financial data, to your point.
And when we talk about invoice level, we're talking about not only do we know the vendor, let's just take a hotel, but we know how many rooms, what that actual room rate was, what the food and beverage tax rate was. Like, you take a sedan, what are you paying for that sedan in that city? Like, line item detailed data,
Yes.
which is incredibly valuable, which we'll get to as we tell you guys all soon about our AI initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's super valuable, and it's getting even more valuable with all the great AI tools available.
So now, so now that goes, it routes for approval.
Invoice routes for approval, and then we can either age the invoices in the system. We can pay them immediately, and once a day or multiple times a day. It's really up to the client. We'll batch all of the invoices due in a given day or in a given week, and we'll send all that invoice data into the client's accounting system or ERP system. So
like as one invoice, right? So like they get like basically instead of the 1,000 invoices that they would have had to onboard 1,000 of those supplier vendors, they would have had to process individually and code 1,000 of those individual invoices. Yes, instead, right. They're getting literally one invoice that's for, let's just say, $1 million that includes that 1,000, right? And then what you're saying is a file that has the aggregate of all the coding. So let's talk about that, because that's like the savings of that and the time and and is huge.
Absolutely. And it's so critical to the clients that they still have that detailed information in their internal systems so that they can marry that with all of the other payments that they're making across their organization. So we send all of that information, those GL codes, those cost centers, all back into their financial system. So they have it in their system. Then the client will fund us, and then we'll disperse payments to all the suppliers.
So they're like processing one payment a day while we're processing the 1,000 of that, like that representing of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And often clients, they'll pay an agency like 10% to do this for them, to handle all their vendors, to make all these payments, and to send them one invoice. They're paying an agency at least 10%. They're usually paying like milestone payments and all this stuff.
And they're not getting all the detailed data back into their ERP.
Data, yeah. Exactly. And we have this really robust system, so we're able to do it for them without charging them anything.
And it's all visible, right? In real time.
Yes.
Also with an agency, I think you have to wait till after the event till you actually get back from them, like all of the data. And then that just probably sits in some type of spreadsheet. It definitely doesn't go into your ERP, and then be able to compare. And if you think about that, there's like multiple divisions across the company. So how are you able to look at the different data across divisions? If this sits here and this sits here and this sits in spreadsheets and this sits, and also like we've had experiences where event planners have in the middle of an event have like whatever, they left the company, something happened and someone else had to pick it up. And they had everything all in one unified place, just even from a logistical perspective, they had it and they were able to pick it up.
Yeah. So that happens all the time, that event planners or users leave the company, and all we have to do is get the client's permission to add a new person to the system. We just replace the old person with that new person, and then they have access
They're
to
assigned all their programs and all their payments.
Correct. Yep. They have access to everything. So it's really easy for them to see where things were left off.
And what about from like an audit perspective? Because now all of their invoices, all of their approvals, all of the vendors, everything's now in one unified place.
Clients are able to take all of the data in our system, pull that into our reporting module, and they have at their fingertips reports, so they can make sure things like all their invoices were approved, that they were approved by the right people. They could see spend by category, so they can make sure that people are spending on categories that are within their event policy.
Taxes too, right?
Taxes.
Tax incentives.
They can see all the tax incentives. In countries outside the U.S., they can run reports on VAT and GST to make sure that internally they're reclaiming all that VAT and GST that they're eligible for. So it's really powerful when they have all the data in one place, these different reports. As part of our implementation process, we set up several different reports for the clients. We understand their business and what reports that they might need to achieve their outcomes. So we help get that set up for them so they're able to, on a quarterly basis, run audits or see how they're spending with different suppliers on different categories of spend, or making sure that they're doing things like reclaiming VAT.
And what's coming? Like, what's so exciting? And I know everyone's talking about AI, and the importance of having unified data. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and I was just reading this, a lot of people who are leaders in the industry are posting around there's so much more that you can do from a strategic perspective with events and to maximize your dollars. But the challenge with event data is it's not unified. It's sitting in everyone's spreadsheets and so the power of not, so Event obviously is a place where all of your data, whether it's your event program, your productions, everything's in one place in that detailed level from at invoice level data, and allows you to be able to have the unified data. But now, we've had for years reports that you were talking about, which were great and people appreciated. But now it's like there's a whole new level and a whole new advantage that if your data is all unified and in real time, not after the fact where you can't act on it. What is it? What's coming, Alex?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's super, super exciting because now you no longer have to take your spreadsheet, download it, create a pivot table, try to figure out what trends are there. Everything is accessible via AI agents now. And we're coming out with a new AI agent in our platform, which I'm super excited about because you'll no longer, like I said, need to download that spreadsheet. You can ask the AI agent for whatever data you want, and then the agent can analyze the data for you. It can show you trends. It can tell you, oh, maybe you should consider having your next meeting in Los Angeles instead of San Francisco because it costs like $100 less per person. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do now with AI. And I'm super excited to have our agent embedded in our platform where users can easily access the data and analyze all these trends. And it doesn't even have to be after the fact. It could be before the meeting. The user could tell the AI agent, hey, I'm thinking of having a meeting with 300 people. These are the things I want to do. How much would it cost if I had it in Phoenix versus if I had it in LA? And the agent could put together budgets and recommendations for the user with the data we have in our system.
And I'm so excited about that because I know it's like something we've wanted to do for years, and now we have the capability to do it. And I think also it's like, where am I, if I'm running a meeting and you get all these quotes from your vendors, you could be like, are these reasonable? Or are they not? And you can compare to what you've paid before. You could look and say, okay, what's the range that we've been paying for, I don't know, a sedan, and where's the outcast and what are the vendors that we should be bringing into a preferred vendor program? And I think we're also going to allow databases of anonymized data that people can compare. So they'll have their own internal data, right? And then they'll be able to compare it to outside data of the industry data to see like if they're in par, if they're paying more, if they're paying less, which they could benchmark, which I think is hugely valuable for event planners to be able to bring up to their senior leadership and talk about, you know what, we're maximizing every dollar that you've got that you're giving us, because now events are really a big marketing tool and a major marketing channel, that we're maximizing that channel with every dollar. And I think that's a huge part too. They could look for trends of fraud potentially that are coming, and just anything. You could go and say, tell me about my data. What are you seeing? What should I be looking for? What could I be doing differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is huge for the event planners because they no longer need to spend as much time trying to figure out, did I get the best rate, and going back and forth with their vendor. They instantly will be able to see that and know that. And then they can spend more of their time putting on an awesome event and being super creative and creating really awesome experiences.
So I think when we talk about what we're trying to accomplish, we want to take completely off their plate all the tedious work, right?
Absolutely.
All of that, from vendor onboarding to making payments, to doing reporting, to doing reconciling, to coding invoices, production accountants also. All of that gone. So, and then what we want to give is all the compliance, right? Approval before pay, everything that's really important, integration into their ERP systems, and then this whole new world of intelligence. And I really think that those who have the intelligence are going to have such a huge competitive advantage. And because live events are becoming such a major channel, that companies are even talking about in their reports, in their annual reports, how much money they're going to be putting more towards events as a marketing channel. And so the more money you could put in because you're optimizing it,
yes,
the better return you're going to get, the better you're going to perform, and you're going to have an advantage against your competitors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Events are so important in today's world, especially everyone's on their phone or their computer, and people are craving these in-person events. And it's great for business. I totally agree.
And then on production side, it's all about like, I mean, productions are so under pressure to maximize their dollars also and to bring those costs down. So I feel like there's so much opportunity. I want to just talk about that for a second because we talked a lot about events, but the studio level, I mean, the industry today, nobody can see really, especially until after the fact, if they find they poured all their data and they put it into a data warehouse. But in real time, being able to have all of your productions in one platform with true visibility in real time, being able to see from, you know, the budgets all the way through what's committed of that spend and what's been paid of that spend and aggregating it across and seeing your vendors, right? And we have that solution on a global scale for them.
Absolutely. Today, the production companies are paying resources to do that all for them. And a lot of it's being done manually. And you're going through all these spreadsheets to figure out exactly how much you spent on the production, like to this last very single minute, and then handing that over to the production company or the studio. So on Friday morning, they know exactly where they are with their costs. And it takes so much like effort for these individuals to do that. It's super important, like highly critical. And it's important now that they'll be able to do that automatically and have that real-time visibility so those folks can spend more time maximizing their budget and their spend, and they can know in real time, the studio can know where they're at with their
So
spend.
I have a couple questions for you, Alex, because I think, first of all, I want to hear if you've got some of our stories, because I think pulling us back around to the service side of it, you know, and implementation. So you lead the implementation, you lead also customer success. From the time the sales team hands it off, like you really own that client forever in your teams. So tell us just like some of the stories that you've experienced, and also tell us like some of the challenges that are within implementing something like this and what you guys have been able to do to really help make that easier. And what do like the customers say to you once they get it? Like what's their biggest apprehension, like why they don't want to do it? And then once they do it, like, what's that like for them? Because you get to see it firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say almost everyone to some degree is a little nervous about change, right? Because you're doing things a little differently with our software and with our platform. So I think that change management is probably one of the biggest hurdles, as with any software that you're implementing or new tool that you're starting to use. But we have such a great solution for these enterprise clients. We have a really robust implementation toolkit where we kick off the project. We make sure all the right people are involved, because at a large enterprise, it's important you're not just involving the events team, but when it comes to payments, we need to pull in the AP teams and the finance teams, and making sure that we're checking everyone's box, making sure that they're comfortable that we meet all the different compliance criteria, that we're getting all the important financial data into their system, that we're following their AP practices and policies. So we make sure everyone's involved. We have a great kickoff meeting, and then we have several different workshops over the series of a couple weeks to make sure that we're gathering the requirements. And then we take all of the requirements, we get that configured in our system. We get the file or integration set up where we send the data into their ERP or accounting systems. And then we host a number of different training sessions. We're able to come out in person. We get them trained and super comfortable with the tool and the software. We go live with the software. We're there to support them once they go live. We provide white glove service really throughout the course of our relationship, but especially through the first couple months of them using the platform, to make sure that they're comfortable, answer any questions they have. They have access to either my phone number personally or with someone on my team. We're there to support them, answer any questions that they have.
A lot of people might hear and say, oh my gosh, it's going to be a huge IT project with lots of budget till I get this integrated. I know we worked really hard to be able to do that really quick, because ideally we'd love to get even a large enterprise set up within less than 30 days. So well, how do we do that with like why doesn't become a big IT project for the ERP?
Absolutely. So it's really easy to get set up. There's no integrations that are required for us to integrate with a client's ERP system. We can do everything via file transfers very securely, get all that data over. We are also able to integrate if that's something that the client's interested with, we have really robust APIs that the client has access to once they start working with us. But we are also able to integrate with file transfers.
And we have already an integration with Cast and Crew. We have an integration with SAP. We have an integration with Cvent. We have like lots that are already set up. So those are easier too if you want to just turn those
it
on.
Absolutely. And if we don't yet have an integration with the software that you're working with, we can utilize AI to really easily transfer data between our system and another system or vice versa.
So that shouldn't be a reason why people like, we figured it out. Like a while ago, we're like, we got to get all these companies to like do and they're like, they didn't invest in APIs. So we invested in APIs, but they didn't. So what are we going to do? So we're like, we still have to figure it out. So we just figured out, right? If they're just a legacy system and we got to make it that they don't need to do anything and it's all on us and it's easy on our client, right? That's what we just had. Like, that was like one of our things. We just kept having to like figure that out one domino at a time, just knock it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the goal is to make it really seamless for the client and make sure that the data is transferring on our end. And we're able to do that for any system.
What's some of the craziest stories that you experienced? I can remember like at some points you being up in the middle of the night, being responding to things.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one year it was like Super Bowl Sunday and I was watching the Super Bowl with my family, and there was a really important event going on in Vietnam and they needed a payment to be made. Yeah, I was talking to the client and the vendor and making sure that we were able to execute that payment on Super Bowl Sunday and have their event go smoothly, because we work with clients all over the world and we have team members located all over the world who are there to support them. And then when there's escalations, our team in the U.S. is available.
And you're 24/5, right? You're 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
There's like no time because we're so global. So any time people need to be able to reach somebody.
Exactly. And yes, we have that support. We have team members located in China and in Europe. And we're able to support clients 24 hours a day. And if clients have questions on the weekends, we're also able to support them then.
That's amazing. What other stories? Are there any other stories that you want to share with us that are pretty crazy?
I was helping a client get trained, and this client had been using our software for like 4 or 5 years, for quite a while. And there was a new group at the client who heard about our software. They were pretty excited because they did smaller events around the country and they were really struggling to pay their vendors. And it was right before the holidays, and I did this training session, and I swear the client, they were almost brought to tears. Like, they were so excited and so relieved that they were going to finally have a solution that enabled them to do their job and get their vendors paid. And they're like, wow, it's like Christmas came early. They're like, you're like Santa Claus. I've never been compared to Santa Claus before, but it felt good, to be able to help them and support them. And often it's like within our companies, it's either the events team or the meetings and events team that we start working with. And there's all these other groups within that company that really also need help paying these smaller one-off vendors, and it's fun to be able to meet with those different groups.
Creative industries, you already mentioned that they move really fast. Their relationships are really important, but also it's project-based. If you think about an event, or you think about a production, or you think about music and entertainment, where you have like a tour budget or whatever else, it's a whole bunch of little small projects. And each one of those has a budget. And each one of those has lots of vendors that need to be, onboarded to be able to be paid. And lots of those have very intense timelines. And you compare that to almost all these other industries, like you had mentioned, that you make a budget, an annual budget for the whole year. You have maybe 10 vendors in manufacturing or whatever else that you use, and you're using them over and over again, and you've got plenty of lead time, and it's just much more like calm and relaxed. And okay, you get them paid. But the project-based industries is so different, and there's so many factors that come into these industries. And I think, what's exciting for us, I think, is that we've really built a solution that is purpose-built for these industries where they move fast, where it really matters,
Yes.
where creativity and the impact, is super, super important. And like, it's meant for those projects. It's meant for those multiple one-time vendors. It's meant for the speed. It's meant for, the everything that these industries need, and they've never had it before. And they've always had to do workarounds, or like you said, lots of extra work, lots of extra time. And people went into these industries, whether they're in production, they want to be creative. They don't want to be doing tedious work. If you're in events, you're like, want to create a great event. You don't want to be sitting reconciling credit card statements. And nor does your team, whose job, like, they much prefer be doing it more automated too. And I think, we've got the essence, and we've been doing this for 16 years, and like we know it really, really well. And I think with the new opportunities that AI has brought to the table for our product, that and the way the world is changing, and the importance of human connection and importance of creativity, that like it's converging, like to me, like all at once, where this is like such a great opportunity to bring the solution. And for those that have never experienced it and who have never seen Eved, like they gotta just take 15 minutes and look at it and be like, whoa, you really understand my world.
Like, this is a huge relief. I didn't even know something like this existed.
I don't have to be nervous that I'm sending a budget or a reconciliation or a spend report that wasn't exactly right, and it wasn't my fault because I'm pulling from different things, or remembering the receipt, or approving something I shouldn't, or paid a terrorist, or, you know, a huge fraud that I'm going to have to go up to my CFO. And I think our biggest champions are the CFOs in these, and procurement,
Yes.
right? Yeah. But with Eved, they get what they need. The procurement gets what they need. The CFOs get what they need. And there's nothing else like that.
Absolutely.
I really want to thank you, Alex, for like 10 years. You've been such a huge part of building Eved alongside me, alongside our team. We've been a pretty close-knit executive team for a really long time. And I've loved watching you grow from the implementation manager to like really leading all the operational sides. And your dedication, every client, you know, so appreciates you. You represent everything that we stand for to the customers. You care, you're empathetic, you're bright, you want to solve everything, and you're such a huge contributor. And I love that and I feel like it's so unique that we've got our executive who's in charge both of our product and what gets prioritized and what we're doing, who's also over all of the client side. So you're prioritizing every day what makes sense for our customers.
Absolutely.
And it's just changing the way we're working. And I just want to thank you. And I'm so excited for what's next.
I'm excited too, and it's been so fun. And I want to thank you for all the opportunities that you've given me. And I've got to, the new challenges I've got to take on over the last 10 years. It's been so fun. I love working with you. I love working with our clients. And yeah, I'm super excited for the next several years and months.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.